For more than 20 years, Senator Harold Briggs ruled Stonefield County like a private kingdom. People said he smiled in public, but sharpened knives in private. To his supporters, he was a defender of traditional values. But to the black community, he was a shadow they could never outrun, a man whose policies quietly punished them, whose influence stretched into the police department, the courts, even local businesses. Briggs thrived on fear. He knew how to make people disappear from positions, contracts, or committee seats. He made a single call, and suddenly someone lost their job, or found themselves at the center of a mysterious, trumped-up charge. People whispered that if Briggs wanted you destroyed, it was only a matter of time. But fear always has an expiry date. His countdown began the night a young black teacher named Darius Cole was driving home from school. Darius was tired after a long day of teaching. He was a calm, gentle man, the type of teacher students confided in. That night, he drove slowly through his quiet neighborhood, rehearsing tomorrow's lesson in his head. He noticed flashing lights in his rear-view mirror. Police. He pulled over carefully and kept both hands firmly on the wheel, just the way his father had taught him. The officer who stepped out of the cruiser was Officer Mills, a towering man with a stiff jaw and the angry eyes of someone who enjoyed authority a little too much. Everyone in town knew Mills worked directly under Briggs's unspoken instructions. Step out of the car. Mills barked. Darius kept his voice steady. Sir, I'm a teacher. I just finished work. Here's my... Out of the car. Mills repeated, slamming the door open himself. Darius didn't resist. He didn't argue. But Mills shoved him hard against the hood, muttering, You people never learn. The body cam recorded everything. The shove, the punches, the insults. Later, investigators would discover a text message from Briggs to Mills earlier that afternoon. Stop them. Pressure them. Remind them who runs this county. Minutes later, Darius lay bleeding and half-conscious as Mills dragged him to a patrol car, charging with assaulting an officer. The same lie the department had used countless times. But this time, someone saw. Someone who mattered. Across the street, an elderly white woman named Mrs. Lorraine Avery stood at her window, trembling. She quietly recorded the entire encounter on her phone. I think something evil happened outside, she told her daughter that night. She had no idea how right she was. What followed was the usual choreography. Mills filed a false report. The hospital cleaned Darius's wounds quietly, and the department labeled him a violent suspect. Briggs's system worked like a machine, cold and efficient, but Mrs. Avery refused to stay silent. 2 days later, she walked into the police station with her cane in one hand and her phone in the other. I want to report a crime, she said. Some officers laughed, but when they watched the video, their faces drained of color. They all knew who Mills served. They all knew who would fall with him. That same afternoon, Mills was summoned to Senator Briggs's private office. The door closed behind him. You'll fix this, Briggs growled, or we both burn. But the truth was already larger than both men. Across town, investigative journalist Rachel Monroe shoved the last items from her desk into a cardboard box. She had been fired the previous week for refusing to write a glowing article about Briggs. She didn't fear him. She despised him. When her inbox pinged and she opened the anonymous video clip, her breath caught in her throat. Clear footage, police brutality, false charges, direct involvement from Briggs' officer. Everything she needed. She knew Briggs would do anything to bury the evidence. So she withheld the full footage and released just a 10-second clip online. Enough to raise suspicion, but not enough for Briggs to know what she truly had. The clip exploded. 2 million views in a day. The FBI contacted her within 48 hours. A week later, Briggs's empire began to collapse. The FBI arrived without warning. Agents swept through county offices, seizing phones, computers, and records. For the first time in his career, Briggs felt powerless. He stormed into the sheriff's office, shouting, "Do something! Shut this down!" But no one moved. No one even looked at him. The sheriff finally spoke, his voice steady. "We can't help you anymore." At that moment, Briggs understood. Fear no longer worked. Loyalty had vanished. The system he built to protect himself was now protecting itself from him. When the trial began, the courtroom overflowed. Black families who had suffered under Briggs's policies. White families who had stayed silent too long. Teachers, students, journalists, people who wanted justice. Darius entered in a wheelchair, guided by his mother. He kept his head up, even though his eyes revealed deep exhaustion. Rachel Monroe sat in the front row with her notebook. Mrs. Avery stood ready to testify, despite her shaking hands. Every camera in the country pointed at that courtroom. The evidence unfolded piece by piece. The body cam footage the neighbors full recording the text messages testimony from former officers' patterns of racial targeting years of abuses. Bit by bit, the truth devoured Briggs's defenses. The man who once bragged, "I keep this town clean," now sat slumped beside his lawyers, sweating and pale. It was brutal and beautiful. Dramatic irony in its purest form. When the verdict finally came, the room turned silent. Guilty on all counts. Briggs closed his eyes. His hands trembled. For the first time, he looked small, like a man who suddenly understood the weight of his choices. Officer Mills received his sentence soon after. The police department was placed under federal oversight. Old cases were reopened. Multiple wrongfully convicted people were freed. Darius's name was cleared completely. His charges dismissed. His story told nationwide. Justice could not erase the trauma, but it finally forced the world to listen. Power can hide the truth for a while, but never forever. Harold Briggs spent years believing racism could be disguised as policy, that intimidation could silence communities, that fear could hold people hostage. But all it took was one teacher brave enough to survive, one neighbor bold enough to record the truth, one journalist determined enough to expose it, to pull the entire foundation of his empire down. Justice came slowly, painfully, but when it arrived louder than all his threats. Briggs's downfall became a lesson the whole country remembered. No matter how high someone climbs, if their hands are dirty, justice will find them. And when it does, there is nowhere left to hide.